Hey everybody, Carl Lanning, Brazos River Charter School with This Week in History, specifically the week of July 19th through 25th. So let's see what we have happening this week. Well, if you remember last week I mentioned to you this young man who was definitely one of the world's great survivors. Well, his name is Eddie Rickenbacker. And on July 23rd, 1973, Eddie Rickenbacker died, although many people didn't believe it at first. You see, Eddie had been declared officially dead twice before. This time, unfortunately, the report was correct. He suffered a stroke and then died of pneumonia at the age of 82. Rickenbacker certainly was a survivor. He was a pioneer in automobile racing in the early 1900s. There he is. There's back when auto racing was a two-man affair. You had a mechanic that traveled with you. A lot of times his job was to pump oil into the engine and fix the car as it was running. Interesting times. In fact, he actually raced in the first Indianapolis 500 in 1911. The number of crashes that he had as a racer, you can't even hardly count, and this is in the days, as you can see, before what you and I would recognize as a crash helmet for sure. During the First World War, Eddie became a pilot. He actually became America's highest scoring ace with 26 confirmed kills. He was awarded the Medal of Honor at later on because during one particular attack, he took on 7 German aircraft single-handedly, shooting down 2 so that a squadron mate could attack an observation balloon, take it out. So, very brave man, no question about it. Well, the first time that Eddie was declared dead was in 1941. Eddie was the founder and owner of Eastern Airlines. While he was flying on a business trip to Atlanta, the plane crashed into the side of a mountain. Besides being trapped underneath the wreckage and soaked in fuel, it was revealed later that he suffered from the following injuries: a fractured skull, a shattered left elbow, several broken ribs, a crushed hip socket, his pelvis was broken in 2 places, a broken left knee, and his left eyeball was blown out of its socket. He lived, yeah. Despite this, he led survivors who could walk to safety to find help, which I can't understand how he could walk, but apparently he did. When he was taken to the hospital, he was left for dead by the hospital staff while they treated those that they thought they could save. Eventually, they got around to him. The second time that he was declared dead was in 1942. Rickenbacker was sent on a morale-raising tour of American bases in the Pacific in 1942, and he was also to personally deliver a chewing out of General MacArthur on behalf of the president for some public comments that MacArthur had made to the press. The bomber that he was riding in got lost and ran out of fuel and had to ditch in the Central Pacific. Eddie and the survivors spent 24 days floating around in a rubber raft in the Pacific Ocean. The military called off the search after 2 weeks. Eddie's wife, who was a pretty formidable lady in her own right, persuaded them to keep looking for him, and they did so for another week. On the last day of the search, miraculously, they spotted him. Amphibious aircraft was sent to pick them up. That's Eddie there being carried out. He'd lost 60 pounds during this time. They had spent a total of 24 days at sea. After recovering, he completed his task, including his chewing out of General MacArthur on behalf of FDR. So, Eddie Rickenbacker. Well, on July 20th of 1969, the very first moon landing. This is the lunar lander for Apollo 11 called the Eagle, headed down to the surface of the moon. This is arguably mankind's greatest achievement. Now, Neil Armstrong's first words that were spoken from the surface of the moon as he's coming down the ladder here are universally known. That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. Now, what is far less known is what Armstrong's alleged last words were before leaving the moon. Now, I'll be honest with you, this probably didn't actually happen, and it appears nowhere in the very careful transcripts that NASA kept of all of their communications back and forth to and from the moon. But Neil Armstrong himself, who very rarely spoke in public, told this story at one of his public speeches. He said that when he was growing up, and the neighborhood kids would play baseball in an empty lot that was a vacant field behind his home, Neil said that he had to retrieve a foul ball that had rolled underneath some hedges at his neighbors. The neighbors were the Gorskys. Now, he said that as far as he could tell, their favorite pastime was arguing. So while he was retrieving the ball, he reported hearing through an open window Mrs. Gorsky yell, "Sex! You want sex? You'll get sex when the kid next door walks on the moon." Armstrong said that as he had 1 foot on the ladder and 1 foot still on the moon, he remembered this, and that he said, "Good luck, Mr. Gorsky." And then he proceeded up the ladder. Now, like I said, this probably didn't happen, but Neil told the story. He said it occurred to him, and I hope that it did. I don't know. I guess I choose just to believe that it did. It's a great story. Neil Armstrong, first man on the moon. Pretty impressive. Good luck, Mr. Gorsky. Who knows? Anyway, thank you for your time. I'm Carl Lanning, Brazos River Charter School. Just to let you know what's coming up next week. Innovation. And oh, how things have changed. Anyway, Brazos River Charter School, we look forward to seeing you right here next week.